Yeah, well, first of all, before he got married, he wanted to fly. He always wanted to fly. His father wanted him to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
And father studied law and got honours in law. The result of this was he was sitting on courts martial in the RAF later on in life. But the point was he learned to fly in Digby, 1932, I think. And he was flying open string box aircraft. When he left the Royal Air Force in '54, he had flown a jet. So he went right through the gamut of aircraft development. Unbelievable. But what's so astonishing is, in his entire life, he never got wounded, never got shot down, never had to use a parachute, and he was on active service the whole time. I mean, his plane got shut up, but I mean, with the marvellous Barnes-Wallis design, you could shoot bits out of it and it would still fly. Anyway, mother and he got married in '36. And I have a passport. I've got all the family passports going back God knows when. I've got one with a swastika stamped in it, you know. Because they went to Germany just before the war when Hitler was in power.
And what was your dad doing before the war?
11th of November.
Well, what was his profession?
Well, he was trained as a lawyer, got honours in law, but never wished to practice. He never wanted to spend every morning going up on the train, sitting in the same compartment, talking to these boring chaps that he met every day. You know, it wasn't him. And so he used this to get into the RAF. But two things held him back. One was he couldn't tell the difference between blue and green.
Okay.
But his eyesight was so good. You know, they hold up a plaque with dots on it, and they say, "What number do you see?" His eyesight was so good he could read the words at the bottom.
Oh, really?
So he got through the eye exam.
So he bluffed through,
Fluffed his way through. But what they never found out was that he had asthma. And he used to take off his oxygen mask and use his Rybar inhaler. So his crew knew, and they never split on him. So he didn't get drummed out of the military because of that. Anyway.
Tim is talking about his dad, Paul, Squadron Leader Paul Harris. And Squadron Leader Harris flew after Roberts on the Heligoland39 raid, which we have a very special relationship. So I'm sorry, I just wanted to...
So that's okay. And his commanding officer was Kellett.
Yes.
Who they had flown together before the war in the Middle East. And that's where they practiced formation flying, and this is what I want to show you in a bit of film. And this is why they were able to, father knew how he would lead and kept up, whereas the other side of the formation fell apart. And they couldn't maintain their position. And Kellett was blamed for having led too fast. And father said, "Well, I kept up, where were you lot, you know?" But the point was they brought two squadrons together that had never flown each other before. I mean, it was crazy, the whole thing. And then they had no self-sealing tanks, so a bullet goes through, fuel runs out, you don't get home.
Yeah. No, sorry, let me say, when were you born?
41.
Silly question to ask. 41. Okay, excellent. Yeah. So you were still on the houseboat in 41?
Well, nearly. We moved up to High Wycombe, near Bar Command. Because father was flying bombers, you see.
Yeah.
And I was born at a little house called Eagles, which mother named after their honeymoon in Switzerland or Austria or wherever they went to. And the postman could never get it right. Letters were addressed to the igloo. And anyway, and then by the age of 6, I'd lived in 12 different homes, because father was being posted around, and mother and I were trogging behind, you see. Then father was flying out of Mildenhall, and I don't know if you've ever been to Mildenhall, but just outside the front gate is the wonderful pub called the Bird in Hand.
Yeah.
And mother used to be sitting there. Father said she was the perfect airman's wife. He'd come home from the sortie, and she'd be sitting at the bar with 2 pints sitting on the bar waiting for him, you know. Now, the other point about the Bird in Hand is that is where he and his crews were sitting on the floor the night of Churchill's blood, toil, tears and sweat speech, because they knew by this stage what inadequate equipment we had against the Germans. But he said, we came tumbling out of that. By God, we were going to give them hell. That's what we got. It was a huge boost, quite apart from for everybody else, but particularly for him and his crews. His aircraft went off to have their fuel tanks sealed with rubber on the inside.
Yeah. This is the Wellington.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see, well, they lined them with rubber so that when the bullet goes through, the rubber falls back against the hole and you just about save the fuel, you see. But they were being shot out of the sky and falling into the water. And father could see crewmen swimming around in their May West. 18th of December 1939, 20 minutes life expectancy in the water. So he said to his crews, I'm going to fly in as low and as slow as I can and try and drop them the dinghy, which is in the wing.
Yeah.
Bunny Austin, his navigator, said, I don't think that's a very good idea. Well, okay, said Father, what have you got as an idea? You know, we've got to do something for these poor chaps. So he came in as low as he could. As you know, the aircraft maximum speed is 140 miles an hour. So I suppose he slowed down to about 110 or something. Pressed the tit, out came the dinghy, immediately stuck around the tailpipe. So there he was at 0 feet, 0 speed, and he managed to nurse the aircraft back to a forced landing in Coltishall. And he got one of the first.
That was the closest airfield he could find as he came across.
Whatever, yeah, that's right. I mean, he knew all the airfields around the area.
Yeah. Didn't he receive a barracking from the person who was running the airfield? Is that why he landed here?
Oh, he did. Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, he was forever putting his foot in it. But that didn't worry Father. I mean, he and I, like me, he'd been through public school. Little twerp can give you as much rag as you like.
Yeah, yeah.
He went to Lancing, and I went to Westminster. And really, after you've been through that, divorce and Lloyd's of London, nothing will ever frighten you again. Because Lloyd's was another thing that drove me out. I said, sorry, I had to sell the farm to pay off my Lloyd's debts. And that's why I went.
Oh, okay.
That was another factor in the whole thing. Anyway, Father then fought the war. He went into North Africa under Montgomery to form a squadron to attack tanks. And as he was climbing into the aircraft with a army officer, he said, "Are we going out to get killed?" And this chap said, "No, don't you realise it's this new man, Montgomery? Bloody good, taken over." So Father felt much better going out there after that. And they flogged all across North Africa and then up through Italy, and he finished up commanding Foggia, RAF Foggia, which was the most northerly RAF station in Italy at the end of the war. But what really upset him was that he was asked if he could drop arms and ammo and medical supplies and food to the Warsaw Uprising.
Oh.
Because it was the closest camp to Warsaw. And he said, well, I'd be delighted to, but the trouble is I can't get there and back on our fuel tanks. And we need the Russians to allow us to refuel. And the bloody Russians wouldn't let it happen. They knew they want the Germans to wipe out everybody in the sewers. So, because they knew they'd be the leaders of Poland after the war, you see. So Father wasn't able to do that. But he became great friends with the Polish government in exile after the war. And I don't know if it's still true today, but up till the 60s, 70s, the biggest foreign language newspaper in London was the Polish newspaper.
Really?
Huge Polish population.
Yeah.
And Father got to know the Polish government in exile and all sorts of strange people as a result. Remember that guy who got stabbed in the leg with an umbrella?
Yes.
He knew him. Met him through the Polish group. And Father was frankly anti-communist. And extraordinary story, but my son, he did a degree in science at Durham. Went out to Nepal to teach English as a foreign language, smoking all the wrong sorts of cigarettes and plunking his guitar. And he came home a changed man. No more smoking. I want to be a doctor. So we said, why is this, Patrick? Well, he said, it's simple. I get out there. It's a little school in Lukla. I got 26 pupils aged from 6 to 26. No paper, no pens. They use slates to write on with a stone. The only book in this school was a thick grammar. He said, Dad, even I couldn't understand this grammar. So I said, open the window, and he threw it out of the window, and it fluttered in 1,000 pages down the Himalayas. And very clever. How are you going to teach us English? It's so simple. I'm going to teach you Beatles songs, because they all knew who the Beatles were, and you're going to teach me Nepali dancing. So they made a group to entertain the Americans going up through Lukla to Everest, you see.
Okay.
And he came home. Oh, one of the kids was a 16-year-old girl who had to learn English to become a doctor. And she was the one who told him that 10% of the kids in Nepal do not reach the age of 10 for simple reasons like diarrhea and stuff. Within 5 minutes, one of the mothers came to him with a baby. My baby has diarrhea. And Patrick said, sorry, old lady, I can't help you. Then he thought, crumbs, I'm not the son of a farmer and a veterinary surgeon for nothing. Right, let's try this. Keep the baby warm, lots to drink, nurse it well, etc. And of course the baby got better. So the message goes around the Himalayas.
Very popular man.
The message goes around the Himalayas. There's this fundi in Lukla who's good with babies. You know, another one came.
They were queuing up.
Sunburn. So Patrick, making it up. Right, he said, keep it in the shade, rub in butter, nurse it well. He got better. And so he came home. That's it. I'm going to be a doctor. And he's now the chief doctor in Brisbane Hospital. He got a grant from the Australian government, $1.5 million Australian dollars to research antibiotic resistance in humans.
Good gracious.
He phoned me up one day and he said, Dad, what do you know about colistin? I said, I don't know. Who is he? Oh, Dad. It's not a person. It's an antibiotic, right? This is the last resort antibiotic we've got to give to people. And we haven't made a new antibiotic for 20 years. You've just had the first death in a hospital in Vancouver because we had no antibiotics left. And if we don't solve this, we haven't made one in 20 years, if we don't solve this, we're going back to 14th century plant medicine. Really? And the reason is that we've got this trouble is the Chinese are feeding antibiotics to their pigs and chickens as growth promoters. And it comes down through the food chain and makes you and me resistant to antibiotics. So apparently a Canadian company and a Chinese company latched onto this, and they're working on a non-antibiotic food growth promoter for pigs and chickens. I told one of my moneyed friends about it. He was off like a robber's dog to invest in it, you know. It's going to be huge. Anyway, sorry, I digressed a bit.
No, it's fascinating. Yeah.
I mean, half the stories I tell, people don't believe what I'm telling them, but I've got all the facts.
It's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. Actually, what's interesting is that all the best people end up pig farming.
Well, there were a lot of people who came out of the military and went into chickens or pigs, and then most of them made a bottom. But Father had a particular interest, because every camp he'd been at, or every camp he'd commanded, there was always, somewhere down the back end of the camp, a pig. Using up the waste food, and there'd be some Urk looking after this pig, and Father would always go down and take an interest in this pig. And that's how he decided when he came up. You see, we bought the farm in 49 in anticipation of his retirement in 54.
All right.
And we had a few pigs, but they had a ration, and this was as valuable as a ration for people.
Yeah.
We could feed pigs, but these pigs were terrible, so we got rid of all them. And he then set about, I've got them still, the National Pig Records. Every pig farm in Great Britain, under a code number saying how many sows they'd got, the breed, numbers born and reared, the weight at 3 weeks, weight at 8 weeks. And I can remember him with a green eye shade studying these for 3 weeks, solidly. And he finally came up for air, and he said, right, I've decided the landrace has half a pig more than the large white. I'm going to buy a landrace, and I want to buy from these 5 farms. Now, these 5 farms are all under code numbers. So he wrote to the government and said, please tell me who these people are, because I want to buy their pigs. They wrote back and said, we can't tell you that, Group Captain. That's favoritism. And he said, what the hell have we been paying for all these years? Not just the general taxpayer, but all pig farms have had to invest in this research. And you can't tell me the results to improve our pigs? And they said, Group Captain, nobody's ever asked us this question. We'll think about it. 3 weeks later, we got a letter. Dear Group Captain, here is a list of pig farms. They put 20 pig farms on there. We suggest you start at the top.
Right.
They then could be blamed for favoritism. Is that because we'd bought from the best performing farms, we were inevitably buying very healthy animals. Now, you probably don't know this, but in production of meat, fat takes 7 times as much energy as lean. Lean is mostly water. And the more fat you have on a pig, the more food you have to feed it. And these pigs we started with were having a 5-to-1 ratio. You put in 5 kilos of food to get 1 kilo of pig meat. And we were taking about 250 days to get to 90 kilos market weight.
Yeah, they'll be aware. Yes.
When we got rid of these terrible old pigs, we brought in these new ones, we were some of the first in the country to discover that they were free of a disease called enzymatic pneumonia. It doesn't ever kill a pig, but it slows up their performance, makes them less resistant to other diseases, and it makes their feed conversion efficiency awful. We'd bought all these pigs free of enzymatic pneumonia. None of them coughed. It particularly makes a pig cough all the time. And Father formed an association of farmers who were who were free of this disease. Sorry, near
It
Red
was
Hill.
Nutfield.
Yeah.
So that's where he died, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's
where
right.
we really
Absolutely, he
yeah.
died there.
That's where you were growing up, and
I grew up there from the age of 7. I was sent away to school at my prep school in Colwell and came home for my first holidays at the farm, 1949.
okay.
But you see, he was going up to the Air Ministry every day because the Air Ministry were very good to him because Mother was paralysed. I had a French au pair who brought me, which is how I come to speak French. And Mother was mostly bedridden, and Father, every day, we were living in Red Hill, every day he went to walk to the station and he walked past a house agent's. And there was the price of this farm. It came down a bit every week. And one day he walked in and said, I'd like to buy it. And
This is whilst he was at Whitehall.
this is why he was in Whitehall, that's
Yeah.
right, in the Air Ministry. And we bought the farm in 49. He had to sell his lovely old Riley. I mean, it was 100 feet long, and it had great big running boards. It had lamps on the front, the biggest dinner plates, you know, red leather upholstery. I've got this in the film too, in the south of France. In 1947, Mother and I went with him to the south of France, driving all the way in this car. We went to a little village called Hyères on the south coast. Rougeole, which is which in French, in English, it's a very serious infectious disease, and you can't stay in a hotel when you got an infection.
Okay.
We were in a hotel. So Father had to come back to the Air Ministry, so he drove the car all the way home. And Mother and I stayed in a nunnery. And I can remember the first time the nuns laid me across their lap and stuck a thermometer in my bum. I was absolutely horrified. But eventually I got better, and we came back. And I've got all Mother's history. She's written up the whole trip down there. And anyway, that's after the war.
Did your dad talk to you when you were a boy about the war?
No.
No. Okay. So when did you break him down so that eventually he did?
Lifting of the Wellington.
In 85.
That was the absolute...
But that was months before he died.
3 months before he died. But the point was, masses of things came out that he'd never spoken about before. And what I have for you is the speech he gave at the lifting party. We had all the divers there, and we even had Falk, the man in charge of the Messerschmitts, trying to shoot him down.
Yeah.
We had some of your people from Brooklands. I've got pictures of all this. And Kerrit himself, he was still alive then. I'd forgotten I'd met him, but a picture was produced of me with him at the party. And that in this talk, he talks about Kerrit, because Kerrit was blamed for having led too fast. It's even in the official war record by begins with M, chapter record. War record that Kerrit read too fast, and he said that's absolutely wrong. I kept up with him. We knew what we were doing. The other crews had never flown in formation. They didn't know what they were doing, and we'd been cobbled together without ever having flown together.
Your dad was flying Arthur Robert at the rear, though, wasn't he?
No, he was pilot. He was second in command of the whole bloody ship.
Sorry, I mean, where was he within the formation?
Oh, sorry. First aircraft. I mean, there were 6 in the formation,
Okay.
so he was leading his group.
Fine.
And Kellett was leading his group and the whole group.
Okay. Right. All right. Okay.
Anyway, what really made me happy was to come and sit in Father's seat in Brooklands.
You did.
Yeah,
You got in.
Oh yeah, I'm coming again.
How long are you over here for?
Well, I'm hoping to get. Well, we thought we'd go to Inverness because we've got people up there, but I hope this time next year we're going to have the final jamboree.
Yeah.
That's when I want to get down to Brooklands.
Good.
But in the meantime, you see, I've got masses of stuff which I want to scan and photograph and send to everybody. Say, look, I've got all this stuff.
Yeah.
Now that it's recorded, our family can keep the record. Would you like the original? The leaflets Father dropped. This letter from Goering I found. The translation, exhorting his troops in August 44, to fight to the last man. I've got it with me. But I can only bring so much. But I brought him silk maps that were sewn into his uniform. The Mother rescued, absolutely virginal. Most of them became ladies' headscarves after the war.
Yeah.
But these are absolutely pristine. I was going to show these school kids. Because certainly my generation loved stories of escapes from. Oh, and Kellett eventually got captured. He jumped down a parachute, and he was commanding officer, a senior officer in Stalag Luft 3, where they had the big escape. The Great Escape. And he talks about Bader, being so pleased when Bader was finally moved on to Colditz, because he was forever baiting the Germans, real boys, schoolboy stuff. The Germans really got upset and it treated him badly. And one day, he was baiting some German so much, the German brought his rifle down on Bader's foot. Bader laughed in his face. Of course, the German couldn't make that at all. But because of that, the RAF were given permission to fly over the camp and drop a new pair of legs to him.
Really?
Yes. It's unbelievable. I mean,
have you got your father's logbooks?
Oh, I've given one to Brooklyn.
You have?
The night of the battle. It's all there. I handed it to the Duke of Kent. I've handed you got his uniform. Now I have at least one other logbook, if not two, in my possession. But that's for later on. He went on to command Scampton in 1947.
What do you want to say?
I want a stitcher. That's right. He went on to command Scampton in 1947, and it was a terrible winter. I mean, awful snow and so on. And they bulldozed the runways and made great big snowbanks. And there were German prisoners still hanging over from the war, who obviously didn't want to go back. I would know nothing to go back to. And they made me a toboggan with the RAF roundels on it, which it comes up in the films too. I've just, this is the other thing I've done in Scotland, I've been to see my two nephews. This bit of family history. I was married to Ros Angier, N-G-I-E-R, and she was the eldest, next was Tabby Angier, then there was a boy called Phil.
It was too much.
Now Ros was 10 years old when her father was killed in the Imjin River battle, Major Angier of the Gloucester.
Right, yeah.
The last few minutes of the battle, I mean, they ran out of ammo, they had to break their weapons and surrender. But he was shot literally in the last few minutes, and he became one of the unknown soldiers. But as a result of Trump meeting Rocket Man, it rather unglued the story a bit, and the North Koreans allowed information about the bodies that had come south, etc. And Father Angier, Major Angier, was identified by his teeth. He was buried with another man, but they separated because the other man was half his age, so his teeth were much better. So they determined by various means that this was Major Angier. And 8 of my family members have just come back from Korea, where they went to a rededication of the grave, along with the son of a man who was also a sergeant who was killed, buried together in the same grave, which have been all found by the war graves. And they had the British ambassador there and all the army in their colored uniform and bagpipes. And Tabby is a bagpiper, so she was fascinated to see them do their stuff. And all this is on the internet. Came up last 2 or 3 weeks. I can send you the relative thing. But Tabby had 2 boys. I can't remember his real name, but he changed his name to Guy Husey because of Guy Gibson. He's so mad on the RAF. Yeah, so mad on the RAF. He got to write a history of the RAF. So I fed him a few things about my father, and his eyes lit up like taxi meters, I mean, he couldn't believe what I'd got, and I showed him the maps and stuff. Now the other brother, is a professor of biology in the university.
The Reverend Steve Holt.
And where are you from?
I'm from the parish of Bootham in Lincoln, but I'm also chair of the Centre for Reconciliation across Lincolnshire.
Wow. How long has that been in operation?
The Centre for Reconciliation has been in operation now for about 4 years, and it's an organisation, a charity that brings people together, so people of all faiths and none. We provide support to those in need, so we run a hygiene bank, chat cafe, and just work together, bringing people together to combat loneliness, and just to get people to make friends with each other.
So the word reconciliation covers all formats and reasons.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
So the reference for it here today is because of reconciliation with Germany.
That's right. Yes, yeah. That's part of it. That's part of it. But it's also about just being part of a community as well and supporting local communities.
Okay. Fine. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Mr. Doug Elwood, it's nice to see you here at the memorial service. You're very much part of the book.
Yes, I was. I was one of the co-editors for the Daylight to Darkness book, which was quite a research project and very interesting. I think the main thing, it was done for the relatives of the aircrew that all took part in that fateful mission 85 years ago.
We have 4 copies of it at Brooklands, and one of the copies is in the aircraft factory close to where Arthur Robert sits.
Yes.
And a lot of people come in and pick up the book and just read a page or 2. It doesn't matter which page they read, they're reading about somebody's life.
I think what we found most interesting actually was finding the relatives. Unfortunately, we didn't find all of them, but we found about 80% relatives of the airmen that took part. It's also great to see some of the families here today of those men, the likes of Tim Harris, and also Rachel Kellett, who's, I think, going to be here as well. 5, 6 members of the Dogood family. And it's the generations as well. The stories are feeding, to the younger generation,
yes,
which I think is important.
It is very important.
So easily forgotten.
I haven't come across a book quite like this before, in the sense of so many memories of so many who took part in one mission.
Yes.
So it is a very important book.
And they were so young, so many of them.
Yeah.
So young.
Yeah.
You think that so many of the tail gunners and the front gunners were just airmen, the ground crew, who volunteered to be the gunners, mostly the rear gunners who were very sensitive. It looks like we're starting.
Good morning, everybody.
We found out all the history of these actual aircraft as well.
Oh,
that's what we do. We're the Wellington Anoraks.
Yeah. Oh, right. Okay.
Which is why we're here.
Yeah. I was lucky enough to actually go into your Wellington when I was last at Brooklands.
Did you?
The friend I was with, her grandfather, it was relative, was in Wellington's, and she was talking to all the volunteers. They said, "Let me go and get the keys."
Really?
Yeah,
so you went inside?
I went inside the Wellington. I was so chuffed.
So what is your part with the New Zealand squadrons?
I found the grave of a New Zealander when I lived in Norwich. Looked after the grave. I don't live in Norwich anymore. It's a bit more difficult now. But I then got involved with 75 Squadron. And I'm now their treasurer.
Okay.
I then got asked to be the chairman of Mildenhall Register, which 75 were based at Mildenhall for a very short time. And so I'm their chairman. And then because I'm known to be interested in Bomber Command and all that sort of thing, I then got involved with the New Zealand Bomber Command Association.
Okay.
And I do anything like Anzac Day, Remembrance Day, that sort of thing. I lay wreaths. So
you represent them?
I represent the New Zealand Bomber Command
Which is
Association
fantastic.
in the UK.
What's your name?
Denise Bonehouse.
Thank you, Denise. That's very good. Thank you.
That's right.
And there we go.
Oh, wow, I haven't seen that one, no.
We had it. Mark found it.
Yeah.
It was already colourised. Then we had it digitally enhanced.
Yeah.
So, AI enhanced.
Yeah.
By John Bolton, who works in the museum.
It's coloured in.
And I framed it,
Yeah.
and we put it above this little creation that I did.
Yeah.
I'd never seen done before, but I wouldn't call it the family tree of the Wellington.
No.
It's so
Yeah.
in and out.
On that book. Stories that must be.
But it has, I was saying to a lady over there, it has a really interesting effect on people. I was just recalling finding, not that long ago, a lady at the rear turret, and she was clearly very upset. And I said to her, it's a... And she said, my father was a rear gunner in Bomber. Well, my grandfather was a rear gunner in Bomber Command. And not in Wellington. She said, I'm upset because I've never seen how small the turret was or how popular he was at that time. And it has a real impact on people.
Yes.
Covered in bed sheets, but it flew so slowly. The last aircraft to be built without a metal skin.
Yeah.
Maximum speed 140 mile an hour. God,
Right, amazing.
and they were. This is the other thing, Father.
They were young men.
Father was shooting at them with 303 bullets. They were shooting at him with 20mm cannon.
Yeah. Bit of a different ball game. Here's the North.
You're a red pencil.
Well, yeah, you're quite right. In addition to that, of course, their belt buckle had a magnet in it to make the small compass. Their bootlaces had wire cutters in them. Steel.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And the thing I enjoyed was the time when they used to send chess sets out to the prisoners. And of course, you unscrew them, and inside was a magnet or something. The Germans found this, and all they did was reverse the string. The war. They got the stuff out to them without any trouble. Anyway, I've got several of them. These are I must have 5 or 6 of them. Now these bits are interesting. These are the leaflets that Father had to drop during the phony war.
Nickel raids.
And I've got the translations and everything, you see. Here is the Gestaporin. Oh, this chap was hanged at Nuremberg. And I've got the translations. And I got 2 or 3 of these. So there were the kids throwing the leaflets around earlier. Here's another great long one with all the translation. And here's another one, and you can photograph these. Now, this is something you haven't got. This is a letter from Goering to his troops.
Oh, well.
This Father found this in a bombed-out building somewhere, and this is a translation of a letter from Goering to his troops. You know, in 1944, when they knew they were losing the war, and so he's exhorting them to fight to the last man and all this sort of thing. So there you go, and this is the sort of thing Mother collected in her scrapbook. And what I want to do is to scan all of it. And then, as it were, that'll keep that for the family. But I'd like to distribute the information, saying, look, guys, I've got this. Would this interest you?
I mean, for instance, those leaflets could be displayed near the plane, or near the ships where the leaflets would have come up. Because visitors can get quite close to those.
That chute, I think this was dropping flares, and they used it to push the leaflets out. That's right.
And one of our Robert's raids was a nickel raid, dropping leaflets, we found out. The other thing they dropped explanatory things called, that was later, but things called Deckers and nickels. And they were basically little balls of phosphorus wrapped in, get this right, not celluloid, cellulose.
Yes.
That were basically dropped over woodland and farms.
Set them alight.
So when they when they dried out, phosphorus would light up, obviously. But the worrying thing was, when they dropped them out the chute, a lot of them used to stick to the leading edge of the airframe. And of course they dry out pretty well in the wind. Set the canvas on fire.
Absolutely, yeah.
Now, I've got telegrams here to Father when he got his DFC, their congratulatory telegrams.
Not knickers.
Nickels.
Deckers and frazzles, I meant to say. Deckers and frazzles, they were called, getting onto nickels with these leaflets.
Yeah. Now, here is the Evening Post of 1940, and Wellington's going on a raid. Somewhere over here.
Ones with the biggest turrets.
So that would have a ventral turret as well.
Yeah. They're the biggest turrets, which are absolutely useless.
Oh, and now Kellett, who led the raid, he got eventually captured by the Germans and wound up in Stalag Luft.